Hey everybody, RHINO here, the world's strongest pro bodybuilder and inventor of the new and improved Cooler 2.0. It's time for another 10 Talk while I take my 10-minute walk. Thanks for keeping me company. If you listened to my last rant, you'll recall that I got so excited about having rehabbed my knees that I began squatting heavy again and injured my back.
I broke my back.
What do you mean by that?
My back is broken.
What, a vertebrae or what portion?
Spinal.
It just so happened at the time that I saw a post by Blaine Sumner, who I'd spoken to a number of years ago about his hip injury. And he had hurt his back and was able to fully recover using the principles he learned in two great books. With the help of Dr. Stuart McGill's book, The Back Mechanic, and his collaboration with Brian Carroll in their book, The Gift of Injury, I've now made a full recovery from the worst back injury I've ever experienced. And I'd like to walk you through the methods that made that possible. First, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. My back injury, like most back injuries, was preventable. My back was talking to me for weeks before the injury, but I didn't listen. I was just training for fun, and I was excited about piling on more weight each week. So I didn't design a program, and I wasn't employing any of my usual warm-ups and recovery work that I used when I was competing. Of course, the injury forced me to do all of those things, but only after the fact. And I was in a lot of pain, and I couldn't squat or deadlift at all. I've been seeing this more and more since social media has become so popular. Many of my fellow lifters are lifting too heavy too often, and injuries have skyrocketed. So if you're not injured and don't want to be, I'll encourage you to employ Dr. McGill's methods before you get injured. The Back Mechanic and Gift of Injury are as much about injury prevention as they are about rehabilitation. One very important way to prevent injury is to design a sensible strength training program instead of maxing out every week. Now, Eddie Cohn only competed twice a year, and he did hypertrophy training between meets to improve his muscle balance, his joints, and his conditioning. He used a series of linear progression mesocycles with deload weeks to build strength going into a meet. Brian Carroll describes in The Gift of Injury how he did something very similar. He would lift progressively heavier for 3 weeks and then do a deload with 50% of his max on week 4, and then repeat this process to avoid injury. For those of you who are currently experiencing back pain, Dr. McGill's methods can help you return to pain-free lifting. As described in my rant on my knees, the process is simple. First, eliminate the source. Second, find pain-free movements. And third, move consistently. Unfortunately, I had to eliminate squats and deadlifts while I recovered. I also had to do push-ups and dips for chest because the arch and leg drive from benching caused back pain. So it's important to look at all lifting movements as well as daily activities outside the gym, such as getting in and out of the car and bending and twisting to pick things up and carrying things. You have to be constantly aware of proper lifting techniques, movement patterns, and posture. Fortunately, I was able to perform banded leg press and leg extensions without pain, so I continued to do those. For pain-free movements to rehabilitate the back, Dr. McGill recommends doing core stabilizing exercises every day, such as planks, side planks, and the modified curl-up. I'll attach a video where he discusses and demonstrates these movements. Be sure to do them every day, and as a warm-up before training, to help activate and stabilize the core. I recommended Hafthor and Brian Shaw do these daily as well in preparation for the Arnold Classic and the World's Strongest Man. Just as important is what not to do. Dr. McGill is adamant that you should not do sit-ups or aggressive static stretching, such as yoga or Pilates. The core is a stabilizer, not a flexor. It's intended to resist spinal movement. Repeatedly bending and stretching in a manner that deviates from maintaining the natural curvature of the spine can be degenerative. Dr. McGill calls it picking the scab, when you continue to bend and stretch an injury, causing scar tissue to form, which ultimately impedes blood flow and flexibility and leads to a weakened repair that's more susceptible to future injury. I'm sure many of you have received advice to the contrary, and maybe even had a physical therapist instruct you to alternate bringing your knee to your chest when laying down or repeatedly pushing your lower back to the floor. I've gotten the same advice. It may even seem to provide some initial relief, but these movements stimulate mechanisms of injury, and the symptoms return with a vengeance. And that makes you believe you need to go back for more physical therapy. It's a vicious cycle. So no sit-ups and no stretching during your recovery. Instead of aggravating the area, bending and stretching, use core stabilization exercises to strengthen the spine, keeping it in a neutral position. Start with the planks and side planks and gradually introduce weighted carries and one-arm carries. Focus on endurance first by increasing the time under tension, then gradually add weight as the back allows. Dr. McGill says that finding and repeating pain-free motions in your back will cause the remaining painful activities to hurt less and less. Now, most people stop moving altogether when their back hurts, and they believe that sitting or laying down is the solution. Dr. McGill notes that laying in bed for excessive periods actually causes back pain. The discs fill with fluid and they put pressure on the spine, and that's why your back is often stiff in the morning until you move around and the fluid dissipates. The immobility further exacerbates the problem because the muscles necessary to strengthen the core become weak and they atrophy from inactivity. Now, others pursue passive therapies such as electric stem, massage, cryotherapy, or heat pads, which are temporary and superficial if they don't actually create more problems. Now, the real solution is to perform active therapy and use the pain-free core stabilization exercises daily. One of the active recovery methods Dr. McGill had Brian Carroll perform was taking a few brisk 10 or 15-minute walks daily, swinging the arms from the shoulder joint to engage stiffening of the core. So yet another great reason to do the daily walks. Now try the arm swing and core stabilization on your next walk to take it to another level. Now for those of you considering surgery, you have to read these books first. Research suggests you're just as likely to recover without surgery as you are with surgery. Dr. McGill rarely recommends surgery for his patients, and he's had an extraordinary success rehabilitating severe back injuries. Now, Brian Carroll had a fractured sacrum, a crushed disc, and 2 herniated discs, and he was able to recover using these methods and compete again. I had 2 different surgeons, 1 year apart, using 2 different MRIs, tell me I needed hip replacement surgery and I'd never squat heavy again. I spent 3 months rehabilitating my hip with Mark Philippi and went on to squat 905 pounds in training and lifted over 2,300 pounds in competition at age 45, pain-free. And I still have no pain. Flex Wheeler, on the other hand, had back surgery, which resulted in drop foot, took him over a year to walk normally again, and he completely lost nerve sensation to his calf. If you've had an X-ray or MRI, and your surgeon has identified a degenerative spinal condition, so what? Join the team. Studies show that the vast majority of lifters and over-the-hill athletes like myself present with identifiable spinal conditions, and most of these patients are pain-free. Dr. McGill addresses this in his book and believes that these pictures don't tell the whole story, and a movement assessment is necessary to pinpoint the problem, which he walks you through in his book. The fact of the matter is, you can't undo surgery. Dr. McGill suggests trying what he calls virtual surgery, where you perform the rehabilitation program you would otherwise be forced to undergo following surgery, which includes the initial rest period, followed by a very gradual and deliberate rebuilding process, including eliminating the cause of pain, establishing pain-free movement patterns, walking, and implementing the specific daily core exercises, i.e. planks, side planks, and carries. And this isn't just for athletes. My wife had chronic back pain for years, and now she's pain-free after implementing the core strength training techniques and methods. And it's not just about injuries. Brian Carroll's book is loaded with great strength training advice and programming. And while on the subject, I'll throw in one thought on the anti-inflammatories and pain pills. These drugs can impede recovery, erode the lining of the gut, and mask symptoms of injury that should be recognized before major damage occurs. Having said that, if your back pain is preventing you from sleeping, that will likely make it much more difficult to recover. 15 years ago, I hurt my back lifting, and the nerve pain prevented me from sleeping more than a couple hours at a time. I tried to tough it out over a month before I went to the doctor, and I got pain meds, which allowed me to sleep throughout the night. And within a day or two, my back was pain-free, it was significantly reduced. Quality of sleep is critical for recovery. Now, I've never met Dr. McGill or Brian Carroll, so it's without bias that I encourage you to read these books. I believe they provide a step-by-step guide that can be applied to any injury with great success. Well, that about wraps up my walk and my talk. I hope this information helps you on your quest to pain-free lifting.